Now, regardless of that ruling, long-standing divisions on the hot-button issue of gay marriage are unlikely to be bridged anytime soon. We're going to try it here in a second. Wish us luck. Joining us now, President Clinton's former advisor on gay civil rights, Richard Socarides. Okay. Turk doing a Greek name there, I think. And senior legal counsel for the Alliance Defense Fund, Austin Nimmox. Welcome, guys. I want to start with you, Austin. Is this a constitutional issue if you say, hey, listen, you don't have equal rights in this state because the voters voted that way? Can you at least concede that that's certainly a constitutional issue?
Well, I mean, this is clearly a constitutional issue because we're dealing with the #1 right that we enjoy here in America, and that's the right to vote. And that's clearly established in the Constitution. We know that over 7 million Californians came together back in November of 2008 and voted their preference on the definition of marriage in California. You're absolutely right. It's a constitutional issue, and that's the #1 constitutional issue that the judge has to decide here.
That's probably the only thing we'll agree on today. I mean, you know, obviously people know that this is the case where they brought together the legal dream team, Ted Olson and David Boies, who'd been on opposite ends of the Bush v. Gore case, but who came together, progressive, liberal, and conservative, and made the case, made a surprisingly simple legal argument. They, 2 plaintiffs, 2 couples, 2 gay men, and 2 lesbian soccer moms came into court and said, the laws can't treat us differently just because of our status. They wanted to be married, they've been together 10 years, and they made a surprisingly simple constitutional argument. And the other side, the only arguments the other side could make was that this shouldn't happen because we've never done it this way before, because historically we've always done it. It's always been just limited to heterosexual marriage.
All right,
well, you know, much like we had when women couldn't vote or other things, you know, that's the very simple equal protection argument that got made.
All right, now, Austin, I see you shaking your head, but I think that's a fair question. Now, if you say, hey, look, it's a vote, it's a democracy, can the voters of California come out and say, all right, we're not letting black people get married to white people anymore? Hey, we voted.
It's a completely different issue. It's a poor analogy, and
Why?
He knows it when he's making that argument. Well, I mean, racism is a completely different issue. That's about keeping the races apart. Marriage is about bringing the opposite halves of humanity together for a common public good. Marriage has been defined as one man and one woman since the founding of this country.
That's kind of the argument they made in court, which was that it always had been done that way, so we can't do it differently anymore.
All right, but wait a minute now. Look,
no, that's not the argument that was made in court.
Austin, I want to ask you though. Let me follow up because I need to know. You say it's keeping people apart, keeping white people and black people apart, so that's why it's different. But you're keeping people who say they love each other from getting married. You're keeping them apart. How's that any different?
Well, I mean, it's different in that 7 million Californians came together, heard both sides of this debate, and voted what they wanted to vote on the definition of marriage. And you're asking every American to believe that over 7 million Californians who voted on this are somehow bigots or racist.
And that's
exactly a ridiculous argument. That is a ridiculous argument.
That was exactly the point.
And not only 7 million Californians, we know that over 60 million California. Over 60 million Americans across this country have voted on this issue.
One at a time. Let Austin. Okay, I mean, Austin, you're saying they can't all be bigots because they voted that way. Although in the South they all voted against black rights, and you know we had that. But I want to let Richard jump in because you made your point.
This was the core point that you know, you can only take their argument so far. I mean, if 7 million Californians came together and voted one day that women shouldn't be allowed to vote or that blacks shouldn't be allowed to go to certain schools, I mean, you wouldn't say that passed constitutional muster either. There was no valid reason put forth. And in fact, at one point, the judge asked the lawyers for the Proposition 8 side what possible harm would come from allowing gay people to marry. And the lawyer for the proponents of Proposition 8 said he couldn't think of any right now. So, I mean, this was the trial was such a clear indication of the emptiness of the arguments on the other side. So
Austin,
that's why we really suspect that this will be a big ruling today and a big day in the history of gay rights in this country.
All right, we'll see how that goes. But Austin, real quick, last question for you. Now, we have polls showing that actually a majority of Americans are in favor of either gay marriage or civil unions. You can see it there, 42-25. Only 28% say no legal recognition at all. So if that's how they vote throughout the country, are you going to say, oh, fantastic, let's go for gay marriage?
Well, you're making the point is that what Americans decide matters. This is not an issue where you just start throwing out votes that have been made across this country, from California to Maine, Michigan to Texas, all across this country. 31 different states have voted on this, and what's important is that the people made the decisions. You don't just start throwing out millions and tens of millions of votes by one single federal judge because you don't like the result. That is not America. That's not what democracy is all
obviously be
about.
heard by the Supreme Court.
All right. Well, look,
will be heard by the
guys,
Supreme Court.
we got to wrap it up there. And you know, Richard, I don't know you wanted to go to this Supreme Court, so you should think about that carefully. But Richard and also
we're feeling
gentlemen,
pretty good about our odds there too.
All right. Well, you're optimistic. I like that. Thank you both for joining us. We enjoy the conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Now, look, let's go to my take. Will there be gay marriage all across the country one day?